Liana thought she had found the perfect place to start over, until the house began moving her belongings on its own, and watching her every step. Rowan Hale vanished decades ago, but Liana's discovery of his hidden room proved that some killers never leave their homes behind. Liana never believed in curses, yet the moment she uncovered Rowan Hale's secret chamber, the house decided she would become part of its unfinished story. Rowan Hale's victims were never found, until Liana stumbled into the one room the house had spent years trying to hide. Liana entered Crestwood Lane searching for peace, but Rowan Hale's legacy turned her new home into a trap that no one had ever escaped. Rowan Hale disappeared without a trace, and Liana became the first person brave, or unfortunate, enough to uncover what he left behind. Liana moved into the house with hope, unaware that Rowan Hale had built something beneath the floorboards waiting specifically for her. Liana believed the rumors were only stories, but Rowan Hale's presence inside the hidden room proved the house had chosen its next victim. The house on Crestwood Lane stood like a forgotten shadow at the edge of the neighborhood, silently observing everything around it. Its paint had long faded into a dull gray, and the windows reflected nothing but emptiness. Locals avoided walking past it, choosing longer routes just to keep their distance. Stories about the house traveled from one generation to another, each one adding a layer of fear. Some claimed the house was cursed. Others believed something inside it never truly rested. Despite all the warnings, Liana felt drawn to the place the moment she saw it listed for rent at an unbelievably low price. She convinced herself the rumors were exaggerated. She wanted a place where no one knew her, and the quiet street seemed perfect for a fresh start. The landlord handed over the keys quickly, eager to finalize the deal without answering too many questions. Liana noticed his nervous glances toward the house, but she ignored them and stepped inside with cautious hope. The air inside felt colder than outside, as if the walls had not warmed in decades. Dust floated gently in the beams of sunlight breaking through the blinds. Every sound echoed loudly, giving the impression of a larger space than it actually was. As she unpacked her belongings, she sensed a faint pressure in the atmosphere, almost like being observed. The floors creaked slowly beneath her feet, even when she stood still. She chalked it up to an old structure settling, refusing to let fear shape her first impression. Later that evening, as the neighborhood lights dimmed and the world quieted, the house seemed to breathe in its own rhythm. The silence was deep enough to make her heartbeat sound louder than normal. She tried to sleep, but an unshakable feeling settled inside her. Something about the house was waiting, and Liana had unknowingly stepped into its long-held story. Within a few days, the uneasy feeling inside the house grew stronger, settling into Liana's daily routine like an unwelcome guest. It began with small details she tried to ignore. A mug she left near the sink ended up on the kitchen table. A book she placed on her bed appeared neatly closed on the nightstand. At first, she blamed her own forgetfulness, telling herself she was simply adjusting to a new environment. But the changes continued, too precise and too frequent to dismiss as accidents. She felt the house was rearranging itself around her. The nights were the worst. As soon as darkness filled the rooms, the house shifted into another world. Soft footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow and steady, always stopping right before her bedroom door. She stayed frozen in her bed, listening carefully, waiting for the sound to continue, but it never did. She checked the hallway every time, yet nothing was there. The air felt colder in that part of the house, as if someone had been standing there moments before she opened the door. Liana bought a small recording device, convinced she would capture the footsteps and finally prove to herself that she wasn't imagining everything. But every night she tried to record, the device malfunctioned. The batteries drained instantly, or the files corrupted without explanation. The more she tried, the more the house seemed to resist her efforts. She noticed the lights flickering even when she replaced the bulbs with new ones. The walls creaked in patterns that didn't match the wind or the old foundation. She began researching the address online, scrolling through old forums and archived posts. Scattered comments mentioned strange occurrences and tenants leaving abruptly. Some posts hinted at disappearances, but none contained enough details to form a clear picture. Liana felt a chill as she realized she wasn't the first to sense these disturbances. The house had a long history of unsettling experiences. The discovery happened on a quiet afternoon when Liana decided to rearrange her bedroom in hopes of making the space feel more welcoming. As she pushed the heavy wardrobe away from the wall, she noticed a thin vertical line in the wooden paneling, barely visible beneath layers of dust. Curiosity led her to brush the surface with her hand, and the panel shifted slightly. The movement startled her, but she pulled it again, revealing a narrow passage hidden behind the wall. A cold draft drifted out, carrying a scent of damp wood and something older, something untouched for years. She hesitated but eventually stepped inside, guided only by the faint light from her phone. The passage led to a small room built between the inner walls of the house, a space no floor plan had ever shown. The air felt heavy, as if it was holding its breath. The walls were covered with deep scratches forming jagged patterns that spiraled around the room, giving the impression of someone trapped inside, desperately trying to escape. The marks were uneven and frantic, telling a silent story of fear. In the center of the hidden room sat a wooden chest covered in a thick layer of dust. Rusted chains wrapped around it so tightly that time itself seemed unable to loosen them. The chest gave off an unsettling presence, as though it had absorbed decades of suffering. Liana felt torn between opening it and running far away from it. Her hands trembled as she brushed dust off the lid, revealing faint initials burned into the wood, RH. She didn't recognize them, but the sight made her stomach tighten. She left the room quickly and spent hours searching online for any record of previous residents. The name Rowan Hale appeared repeatedly in old articles, mentioned as a suspected serial predator who vanished without arrest. Authorities had failed to solve the disappearances linked to him, and rumors suggested he conducted disturbing psychological experiments on his victims before they vanished. Liana spent the next several days piecing together everything she could find about the house and the mysterious figure known as Rowan Hale. Each article, forum thread, and archived police report added another unsettling layer to the story. Former tenants had left behind short statements filled with panic and confusion. Some mentioned waking up in rooms they didn't remember entering. Others described losing long stretches of time, unsure of what they had done or where they had been. The words felt eerily similar to the experiences Liana had already begun to notice in her own life. Police documents revealed a disturbing pattern. Every resident who had lived in the house for more than a few months had either disappeared or left abruptly. Authorities labeled these events as unrelated cases of stress, personal issues, or sudden relocations. But the dates lined up too closely to be dismissed as coincidence. Each disappearance occurred after the tenant claimed to feel watched or manipulated by something they couldn't explain. Liana realized the house was repeating its history with her. Her research into Rowan Hale painted an even darker picture. He had been a well-spoken man with a calm exterior, but investigators suspected he lured vulnerable individuals into trusting him before subjecting them to psychological torment. No bodies were ever recovered. No official cause of disappearance was ever confirmed. He vanished before police could arrest him, leaving behind nothing but speculation and fear. Rumors suggested he had built secret spaces within the house, possibly to conduct experiments or hide evidence. The discovery of the hidden room now felt more dangerous than intriguing. Liana understood that she had crossed into a part of the house no one was meant to find. The scratches on the walls, the chain chest, and the initials carved into the lid were not just remnants of a disturbed man, they were warnings. The more she uncovered, the disturbances inside the house grew stronger, shifting from eerie coincidences to undeniable warnings that something beneath the surface was waking up. Liana found herself pausing frequently to listen, convinced she heard faint noises rising from underneath the floorboards. At first, she thought it was the old foundation settling, but soon the sounds took on a different character, soft cries, muffled whispers, and rhythmic tapping that seemed to imitate a slow heartbeat. The noises didn't follow a pattern, yet they always surfaced when she was alone, creating a chilling sense of communication from below. Shadows in the house began stretching across the walls in ways that didn't match the angle of the light. Even with every curtain closed and every lamp steady, dark shapes slid along the surfaces like silent reminders that she was not alone. She tried to convince herself they were tricks of the mind caused by stress, but deep down she sensed the house reacting to her presence. The more time she spent in the hidden room, the stronger the shadows grew, as if the space had opened a channel she couldn't close. Sleep became difficult. Every night brought vivid nightmares that felt almost real. She saw unfamiliar faces distorted with fear, reaching out toward her as though desperately seeking help. She woke with her heart racing and her body covered in cold sweat, unable to shake the images from her mind. The dreams blurred with reality, leaving her uncertain of what happened in her sleep and what she imagined. One morning, she discovered muddy footprints leading from her bedroom to the hidden room. They matched the size of her own shoes, and she had no memory of walking there. The realization that she might be moving through the house at night without awareness unsettled her deeply. It felt as though the house was guiding her actions, nudging her toward something buried beneath it. The cries from the floor grew more persistent, no longer faint but desperate. Liana. Determined to uncover the truth, Liana set up several cameras throughout the house, placing them in corners where the shadows moved the most. She positioned one directly outside the hidden room, hoping to capture whatever happened during the hours she could not remember. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of control, as though documenting the events would separate her thoughts from the house's influence. She double-checked each device before going to bed, making sure the batteries were full and the memory cards were empty. The following morning, she rushed to review the footage. For hours, nothing appeared unusual. The house remained still, the only movement coming from the soft swaying of curtains in the draft. But sometime after midnight, the atmosphere shifted. In the footage, Liana's bedroom door slowly opened, and she stepped out into the hallway with a vacant expression. Her movements were slow but deliberate, as though following an unseen command. She didn't look like herself. Her posture was rigid, her steps perfectly even, and her breathing almost non-existent. The camera outside the hidden room recorded her approaching the passage with mechanical precision. Without hesitation, she pushed the panel aside and entered. The chains on the wooden chest, which had seemed impossible to break, fell apart as she touched them. The lid lifted easily beneath her hands, revealing an object she had not seen before, a cracked mirror covered with fingerprints that didn't belong to her. The glass shimmered strangely in the dim light, warping her reflection into a distorted face with hollow features. At the exact moment she leaned over the mirror, the footage glitched. Static filled the screen, and the camera shut off completely. When Liana woke the next morning, she found the hidden room in disarray. The chest was overturned, the chains were scattered across the floor, and the air felt thick with a presence she couldn't describe. She had no memory of the night. When Liana stopped responding to messages and neighbors noticed her absence, concern slowly turned into alarm. After 2 days without any sign of movement inside the house, a report was filed. Police arrived reluctantly, aware of the property's reputation. Even before entering, they felt an unsettling chill radiating from the structure, as though the walls had absorbed the fear of every former tenant. The officers forced the door open and stepped inside, calling out her name, but the house answered with heavy silence. Her belongings were scattered in a way that suggested she hadn't planned to leave. Her keys remained on the kitchen counter, her phone lay on the sofa, and a half-finished cup of tea sat untouched. The more they searched, the more uneasy they became. The atmosphere felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the house resisted their intrusion. One officer described the air as unnaturally cold, with a scent of damp wood clinging to every corner. When they found the hidden passage, their unease escalated into dread. The panel behind the wardrobe stood open, revealing the narrow corridor Liana had discovered. The hidden room appeared disturbed, with dust scattered across the floor and the chest overturned. The cracked mirror lay shattered into several pieces, each fragment reflecting distorted images. Strangely, none of the officers could agree on what they saw in the reflections. Some claimed the pieces showed the room, while others insisted they saw faces that did not belong to anyone present. The cameras Liana had set up were collected as evidence. Most of the files were corrupted, showing either static or warped footage. Only one frame remained intact, a still image captured just before the final glitch. In it, Liana stood in front of the mirror, her face expressionless, her eyes entirely black as though they were empty voids. No one could explain the image or the missing hours that followed. Authorities searched the house repeatedly but found no sign of Liana. There were no footprints leading outside, no signs of forced entry, and no indication she had packed anything. It was as if she had vanished into the walls. Officers avoided staying in the house longer than necessary, reporting an overwhelming sensation of being watched. With no leads and no evidence of foul play, the investigation stalled, leaving behind only theories and fear. The official report listed her disappearance as unexplained, but everyone involved privately believed the house had added another name to its history of victims. Months passed without any progress in Liana's case, and the house remained sealed under police orders. Even from the outside, people swore it looked different now, darker, heavier, almost aware of anyone who dared to look at it. Eventually, the property was sold to a construction company planning to replace it with modern housing. The workers arrived with demolition equipment, assuming it would be a routine job. But from the moment they stepped onto the property, they felt a weight in the air, a pressure that made every movement feel slower than normal. Some joked nervously about the stories, trying to shake off the unease, yet the house stood silent, as though waiting for them to begin. When the demolition finally started, the process moved strangely. Machines malfunctioned without explanation, tools went missing, and workers reported hearing faint knocking sounds beneath the ground. It took several days to bring the structure down completely. Once the remains were cleared, the team discovered an unusual section under the foundation, a large, reinforced chamber that did not appear on any blueprint or property record. The entrance had been sealed with concrete long ago, but the demolition had cracked it open just enough to reveal what lay inside. The chamber was lined with old wooden beams, each one carved with chaotic markings similar to the scratches in the hidden room. In the center of the space lay dozens of human remains arranged in a careful, almost ritualistic pattern. The bones belonged to individuals of different ages and genders, many of them matching the dates of the disappearances linked to Rowan Hale. But what unsettled the workers the most was the set of footprints found in the dust, fresh, clear, and unmistakably belonging to Liana. They led directly toward the center of the chamber, then stopped abruptly, as though she had vanished into thin air. No trace of her body was ever found. Investigators reopened the case, but the discovery only deepened the mystery. Rowan Hale's crime suddenly seemed far more extensive than anyone had imagined, and the house's chilling legacy gained new life. Even after the rubble was cleared and new construction began, workers claimed they still heard footsteps beneath the soil and faint whispers rising from the ground at night. Some refused to return, convinced that the house's presence had not disappeared, it had simply moved deeper, waiting for the next story to unfold.